Hey everyone, and welcome to another deep dive. Today we're going to be talking about digital IDs. And wow, let me tell you, the stuff we found for this one is pretty wild. We've got news reports, expert opinions, and even some predictions that sound like they came straight out of some kind of sci-fi thriller. But this isn't just some abstract tech debate happening over there. This is real. It's happening right now. And it affects everyone. So the big question we're wrestling with here is, are digital IDs the key to a super smooth future? Or are they like the slippery slope to a future where someone else is calling all the shots?
One thing that really jumps out is how countries like China are going all in on this tech,
Yeah.
especially with their national digital currency, the EU.
Okay, yeah, I've heard about the EU one, but isn't that just like a digital version of their regular money? How does that equal control?
Well, think about it. With a fully digital currency, the government has a record of every single transaction. You buy a coffee, bam, they know. You send money to your friend, bam, they know. And in China, that's all tied into their social credit system. So imagine, you post something online criticizing the government. Maybe it's even something small. Suddenly, you might find yourself blocked from buying a train ticket. Or maybe you can't book a flight.
Wait, seriously? They can actually stop you from traveling based on your online activity.
That's the reality in China right now. And what's even more concerning is that China wants to make the EU yuan a major player on the global stage. Like, they want to challenge the US dollar's dominance.
So this isn't just about control inside China. There are international implications too.
Absolutely. Congressman Mike Waltz has been following this really closely, and he warns that the EU yuan could be used by bad actors, countries that want to evade sanctions, or even fund illegal activities without anyone noticing. It's a whole new level of financial maneuvering with potential consequences for everyone.
That's a pretty sobering thought. And you mentioned in your notes that this push for digital currencies is kind of tied to the rise of digital IDs. I get the appeal on the surface. Less stuff to carry around, right? But what makes them so potentially problematic?
The core issue is centralization. Digital IDs basically create a single point of access to all your personal information. And whoever controls that access, whether it's a government or a tech company, has a huge amount of power.
Right. I've heard the concerns about data breaches and identity theft. But even beyond those risks, what are the implications of having all that personal data in one place?
Well, you have to consider who's really pushing for this. Organizations like the UN, through their Sustainable Development Goals, the SDGs, and the World Economic Forum, often called the WEF, they're heavily promoting digital IDs.
Okay, the UN and the World Economic Forum, those are pretty big players. What's their interest in all this?
The WEF in particular, they see a future where digital IDs are the key to everything. Accessing financial services, healthcare, online interactions, you name it. They argue it'll streamline everything and create a more efficient system globally. But critics point out that this also puts a ton of power in the hands of whoever controls these systems.
And we're talking about systems that could potentially be linked to everything, your bank accounts, your medical records, even your voting history.
Exactly. And that's where the concerns about control and surveillance really come into play. If all that data is centralized and accessible, it can be used for a lot more than its original purpose.
One of the articles you flagged mentioned a McKinsey study that found less than 10% of people would voluntarily adopt digital IDs. If it's supposed to be so convenient, why the resistance?
That's the paradox, isn't it? Despite all the benefits people talk about, there's this deep-seated unease about handing over so much personal information to some central authority. It raises questions about trust, about coercion, about the potential for misuse, and it makes you wonder, if it's so great, why do they have to push it so hard?
It sounds like we're facing a bit of a digital dilemma here. Convenience versus control. But to really unpack this, I think we need to talk about the role of AI. It seems like everyone's talking about artificial intelligence these days. Can you break down how it fits into this whole digital ID thing?
Sure. AI, at its simplest, is about teaching computers to learn and make decisions, kind of like we do. It's already being used in things like facial recognition, targeted advertising, even medical diagnoses. And it's completely reliant on data, massive amounts of data. The more data you feed it, the smarter it gets, the more it can do.
So digital IDs become like the fuel for these AI systems. The more data they have, the more powerful they become.
Exactly. And that's where things get ethically tricky. If these AI systems are being fed biased data, they'll just perpetuate existing inequalities and prejudices. Imagine an AI algorithm used for loan approvals that's been trained on data that discriminates against certain groups. That's a recipe for disaster.
So it's not just about privacy then. It's about the potential for these systems to amplify existing social problems.
Precisely. And it raises a whole host of questions about consent. Just because we agree to share data for one purpose, say, opening a bank account. Does that mean it's fair game to use that data to train an AI system that could potentially discriminate against us in other areas?
You've definitely given me a lot to think about.
Mm-hmm.
This is starting to feel less like a tech upgrade and more like a social experiment with some potentially huge consequences. In your research, you mentioned that some religious groups see a deeper, even prophetic dimension to all of this.
Yes. There are some communities who view digital IDs through a spiritual lens. They connect them to biblical prophecies about control and the mark of the beast.
Wow. I have to admit that's not something I'd really considered before. Can you tell us a bit more about their perspective? What are their concerns?
While there are a variety of interpretations, they generally express a deep concern about the potential for digital IDs to be used for social control, to limit individual freedoms.
For example, what are some of the specific scenarios they're worried about?
Well, one figure who comes up repeatedly is Prophet Elvis Mabonia. He's made some pretty startling predictions about the future, including the collapse of Silicon Valley Bank and a global lockdown. He frames these events as part of a larger spiritual battle.
The collapse of Silicon Valley Bank. That was a major event a few years back. It had huge financial repercussions. What's his reasoning behind connecting this to a spiritual battle?
He believes that there are forces at play, a globalist agenda, seeking to control the world through technology. And he sees digital IDs as a key tool in this agenda, a way to monitor and manipulate people on a massive scale.
It's definitely a thought-provoking perspective, even if it might sound a bit far-fetched to some. But it does raise the question, if we're really heading towards this kind of future, what can governments and individuals do to protect themselves and their freedoms?
That's the crucial question, and one we'll delve into in the next part of our deep dive. We'll explore alternative approaches to digital identification data privacy measures and the importance of individual awareness and action.
Okay, so we've established that digital IDs are raising some pretty serious red flags when it comes to control and privacy. But it's not all doom and gloom, is it? You mentioned alternative approaches to digital ID. What are we talking about here?
One of the most promising things on the horizon is this concept of decentralized identity, sometimes called self-sovereign identity. It basically flips the script on those centralized systems we were talking about.
Okay, I'm listening. Break it down for me. How does decentralized identity actually work?
Imagine you have a digital wallet on your phone or computer. And in this wallet, you keep all your important credentials: driver's license, passport, medical records, professional certifications, anything you need to prove who you are or what you're qualified to do.
So instead of a physical wallet, it's all digital. That part makes sense. But who actually verifies those credentials in the first place? And how do you make sure they're legit?
That's where blockchain technology comes in. Instead of relying on some central authority like a government agency or a tech company, blockchain creates this secure, tamper-proof ledger that's distributed across a whole network of computers.
Hold on, blockchain. Isn't that the tech behind Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies? I'll be honest, I still don't totally get how it works.
Yeah, it can seem kind of complex at first, but the basic idea is actually pretty simple. Think of a blockchain, like a digital record-keeping system. But this system is constantly being updated and verified by tons of computers all over the place. Every time someone adds a new transaction or a new piece of information, it gets encrypted and linked to all the records that came before it. This creates a chain of blocks, hence the name, that's basically impossible to mess with or fake.
Okay, so it's kind of like a digital fingerprint that's unique and permanent.
Exactly. So in a decentralized identity system, when you get a credential verified, let's say it's your college degree, that verification gets recorded on the blockchain. Then you control that verified credential in your digital wallet, and you choose who you share it with.
So I could show a potential employer my verified degree without them needing to call up the university directly.
Exactly. And because that verification is stored on the blockchain, they can be sure it's legit. It streamlines everything, reduces the risk of fraud, and most importantly, puts you in control of your own data.
My mind is kind of blown here. This sounds incredibly secure and efficient. Are there any real-world examples of this in action?
It's still early days, but there are some really cool projects happening. The Sovereign Network, for example, is a global public benefit blockchain built specifically for self-sovereign identity. And there are companies developing user-friendly digital wallets that will make it easy for everyday people to manage their own credentials.
That's encouraging to know. There are people out there working on solutions that actually empower individuals, rather than putting all the power in the hands of a few. But what about governments? Are they on board with this decentralized approach?
Actually, some governments are starting to look into decentralized identity solutions. Canada, for instance, has been pretty active in this space. They've launched a bunch of pilot projects, and the European Union is working on regulations that prioritize user control and data protection in digital identity systems.
So it's not just a fringe idea then. Governments are actually recognizing the potential of this technology.
Yeah, more and more they are. There's a growing realization that decentralized identity could be a more secure, more transparent, and more efficient way to manage identities and deliver services.
But let's be real for a second. Governments and control, they kind of go hand in hand. How can we be sure they won't try to take over these systems and use them for their own purposes?
That's a valid concern. You're right to be skeptical. That's why it's so important to have strong data protection laws in place and to hold governments accountable for how they use these technologies. We need to be super vigilant about protecting our rights and freedoms in this new digital world.
It sounds like a constant back and forth. The potential for good, the potential for bad. But ultimately, it comes down to us, right? Individual awareness and action.
Absolutely. We can't just sit back and passively accept whatever tech gets thrown at us. We need to educate ourselves, make informed choices, and demand that these systems are designed with our best interests in mind.
Okay, so we need to be informed, engaged, and maybe even a little bit rebellious. But for those of us who aren't tech experts or activists, what are some actual steps we can take?
One simple but important step is to minimize your digital footprint. We talked about this a bit before, but it's worth emphasizing. Think about all the places where you leave digital traces. Social media, online shopping, loyalty programs, even just browsing the web. All that data can be collected and used to build a very detailed profile of you.
It's kind of creepy when you think about how much information is out there about all of us.
Yeah.
What can we actually do to shrink our digital footprint?
Start by taking a look at your privacy settings on all your social media accounts. Limit how much personal info you share publicly. And be careful about what apps and websites you give access to your data. And consider using privacy-focused browsers and search engines that don't track your every move.
I've heard good things about browsers like Brave and search engines like DuckDuckGo.
Yeah, those are definitely worth checking out. They're built with privacy as a top priority and offer a great alternative to those data-hungry giants.
So we're locking down our passwords, shrinking our digital footprint, and browsing the web like we're in some spy movie. What else can we do to keep our data safe?
Be on the lookout for phishing scams and other tricks people use to steal your information. Don't click on suspicious links in emails or text messages, and be careful about giving out personal details over the phone unless you were the one who made the call.
It's like a digital game of whack-a-mole. You block one threat, another one pops up.
It is. It really is. It's a constant battle, and staying informed is key. Keep up with the latest security threats and good practices by following reputable sources like the Electronic Frontier Foundation, Access Now, or Krebs on security.
So we need to be proactive and stay in the know. But what about the bigger systems and policies that are shaping this whole digital landscape? Can we actually have any influence on those?
Absolutely. Collective action can move mountains. Support organizations that are fighting for digital rights and privacy. The ones I mentioned earlier are a good place to start. Write to your elected officials and tell them to support strong data protection laws and responsible tech policies.
You know, I've always felt like doing stuff like that is just a drop in the bucket. But when you think about millions of drops, it starts to feel like a wave.
Exactly. Every voice matters. And don't underestimate the power of just talking about this stuff. Engage in conversations about these issues with your friends, family, coworkers. The more we talk about these challenges, the more awareness we raise, and the more pressure we put on the people in power to do the right thing.
It's a good reminder that we're not alone in this. There's a whole movement of people who are worried about these issues and are working to make things better.
There is. And remember, this isn't about rejecting technology altogether. It's about using it wisely, ethically, in a way that benefits all of humanity.
That's a powerful message. We can have the benefits of tech without giving up our values or our freedoms.
Exactly. This deep dive has taken us on quite a ride, hasn't it? We've explored the good and the bad of digital IDs, the global forces at play, the ethical and even spiritual questions they raise. But most importantly, I think, we've shown how much power we have as individuals when we're aware and when we take action.
It's been wild, for sure, but also really empowering. We went from feeling overwhelmed to feeling like we actually have the tools to deal with all this and to create the kind of digital future we want.
That's what we were going for. The future isn't set in stone. It's something we create through the choices we make every single day.
And as we've learned, those choices matter more than ever in this crazy digital age.
They do indeed. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. We hope it's made you think, given you some tools, and maybe even fired you up to help build a digital future that reflects the best of humanity.
And remember, stay curious, stay informed, and get involved. The future is in our hands.
All right, welcome back to our deep dive into digital IDs. We've talked about the potential upsides and downsides, the global players involved, and the ethical and even spiritual questions they bring up. Now let's get down to brass tacks. What can you actually do to navigate this digital world and protect your rights and your freedoms?
Hit me with it. Give me the tools to fight the good fight.
First things first, let's talk passwords. I know, not the most exciting topic, but hear me out. Strong, unique passwords for every single account. That's your first line of defense against hackers and data breaches.
Okay, I get it. Strong passwords are important. But how am I supposed to remember all those random letters, numbers, and symbols? It's impossible.
That's where a password manager comes in. It basically generates and stores all those complex passwords for you. So you only have to remember one master password. Seriously, it's a game changer. And while we're at it, make sure you enable two-factor authentication whenever you can. It adds another layer of security by requiring a code from your phone or email on top of your password.
Password managers and two-factor authentication. Got it. What else?
Let's talk about your digital footprint. We touched on this before, but it's worth digging a little deeper. Think about all the places you leave digital breadcrumbs. Social media, online shopping, loyalty programs, even your browsing history. All of that can be collected and used to create a pretty detailed profile of you, whether you like it or not.
It is kind of creepy when you stop and think about how much information is out there about us. What can we do to minimize that digital footprint?
A good place to start is by checking the privacy settings on all your social media accounts. Limit how much personal information you're sharing publicly. And think twice before giving apps and websites access to your data. You don't always have to click yes, And consider using privacy-focused browsers and search engines that don't track your every move. You'd be surprised how much they can collect.
I've heard good things about browsers like Brave and search engines like DuckDuckGo. Are those legit alternatives?
Absolutely. They were designed with privacy in mind from the ground up. They offer a great alternative to those big data-hungry companies.
So we're locking down our passwords, minimizing our digital footprint, and browsing the web like we're in some secret agent movie.
Yeah.
What else can we do to keep our data safe?
Always be on the lookout for phishing scams and other ways people try to trick you into giving away personal information. Never click on suspicious links in emails or text messages. And be really careful about giving out your personal details over the phone unless you initiated the call.
Ugh. It's like a never-ending game of whack-a-mole. You block one threat and another one pops.
I know, right? It's a constant battle, and that's why staying informed is crucial. Keep up with the latest security threats and best practices. Some good resources for that are the Electronic Frontier Foundation, Access Now, or Krebs on Security.
So we need to be proactive and stay informed. But what about the larger systems and policies that are shaping this whole digital world? Can we actually do anything about those?
You absolutely can. Collective action makes a difference, even if it doesn't always feel like it. Support organizations fighting for digital rights and privacy. The ones I just mentioned are great. Write to your elected officials and push them to enact strong data protection laws and support responsible technology policies.
I always feel like those kinds of actions are just a tiny drop in the bucket, Like, does it really matter?
It does. Think about it. If millions of people all do that, it becomes a wave. And don't underestimate the power of conversation. Talk about these issues with your friends, your family, your colleagues. The more we talk about them, the more awareness we create. And that puts pressure on those in power to take notice and do the right thing.
You're right. It's easy to feel alone in this, but there's a whole movement of people who are concerned about these issues and are working to make the digital world a better place.
Exactly. And this isn't about becoming a tech-hating hermit. It's about using technology wisely, ethically, in a way that benefits all of us, not just a select few.
That's a powerful message. We can embrace technology without sacrificing our values or our freedoms. It's not an all-or-nothing proposition.
Exactly. Wow, this deep dive has really taken us on a journey, hasn't it? We started by exploring the potential good and bad of digital IDs, looked at the big players involved, and grappled with the ethical and spiritual questions they raise. But the most important takeaway, I think, is that we all have the power to shape our digital future. It's not predetermined. It's up to us.
Yeah, it's been a wild ride, but it's left me feeling empowered, not defeated. We went from feeling overwhelmed to feeling like we have the tools and knowledge to navigate this digital world and create the future we want.
That's what we were hoping for. The future isn't set in stone. It's something we all create through the choices we make every day.
And as we've seen in this deep dive, those choices matter more than ever in our increasingly digital world.
They do. Thank you for joining us on this journey. We hope it sparked your curiosity, armed you with some knowledge, and maybe even ignited a passion to help build a digital future that reflects our best selves.
And remember, stay curious, stay informed, and most importantly, get involved. The future is in our hands. Until next time, everyone.